Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to 7th Street. Today's video is actually a request, believe it or not. A friend of 7th Street Productions, Johnny, we ran into him a couple of times up at Crypticon Seattle while attending their film festivals. He's a super cool guy, but he saw that I had recently bought the Arrow Blu-ray of Death Smiles on a Murderer by Joe D'Amato. And Johnny said, hey, why don't you do a video on a Joe D'Amato film? And after thinking about it for a while, I realized that I was never going to settle on just one Joe D'Amato film. So I thought that we would do 7th Street Productions' top 5 favorite Joe D'Amato films. Now, before we get into this, I would like to say that this is just my top 5 favorite. I mean, it's just my opinion, and it should be taken as such. Some people get sort of upset when their favorite films aren't included on the list, or when I have an opinion that you don't like, and that's totally fair. Just make sure that you leave a comment below letting me know what your favorite film is and why it's your favorite film. But without further ado, let's get into this countdown. Before we start our list, I thought that I should give a little bit of information on Joe D'Amato. He is a Italian splatter director from the 70s and 80s into the early 90s when the Italian horror boom was starting to die down. He's probably most well-known among cult fans as a splatter director doing films that have been featured on the Video Nasties list. But he was also a pretty prolific porno director as well. And I honestly think that some of his best stuff came from when he was a producer. He produced Lucio Fulci's last film. He produced Troll 2. He's had a really interesting and varied career. And you know, I'm a very big Italian horror fan. Joe D'Amato is not anywhere near my top favorites, but he's also nowhere near the worst, in my opinion. He just sort of exists somewhere in the middle. So this should be a really interesting one. Alright, starting off at the top of this list is one that he actually went uncredited as the director for, and that is Killing Birds. Although most of you probably know the movie as Zombie 5 Killing Birds, it was released by Shriek Show, I'd say about a decade ago, in a 3-movie pack with Zombie 3 and Zombie 4 After Death, and for whatever reason they labeled it as a sequel to the Fulci Zombie series. It is not. It's not a zombie film really at all. I mean, it's a zombie movie in the same way that City of the Living Dead or The Beyond could be considered a zombie movie. It's actually, it's really like one part Alfred Hitchcock The Birds ripoff, one part crazy slasher giallo film, and one part pseudo zombie haunted house kind of movie. It's funny, the first time I saw this movie was obviously under the Zombie 5 title. I had got it off of Netflix back when you used to get DVDs in the mail. And I was super bummed the first time I saw it. I was really let down. I was probably about 14 years old. And I absolutely hated the movie. I mean, I despised it. It wasn't until a few years later that I got the box set and I rewatched the film knowing that it wasn't a zombie film, that it was, you know, an Italian horror film, and I started to warm up to it. And it hasn't been in the last few years that my collection has really grew, especially in the Italian genre. And I go back and I'll watch, you know, a director's film sort of back to back when I get in a mood. And Killing Birds just ended up being one of my more favorites of Joe D'Amato. I'm not sure if that's for nostalgic reasons. It's an interesting film. There's not much going on here. It's a group of college students who go off on an excursion to study rare birds, and they come across a haunted house where a bunch of people were killed years before by this crazy Vietnam vet. And of course, spooky things start happening. There's one really cool death in particular where this guy who's always wearing a necklace gets it caught in like the generator for the house, and it like saws his head off. It's really pretty cool. The movie's strange. There's like no dialogue for the first 10 minutes. Very dreamlike, a lot of fog. Pretty stereotypical late 80s Italian horror film. But for whatever reason, it just ends up being one of my favorite Joe D'Amato films. Alright, at number 4 is one that I'm sure makes most people's top 2 at least, and that would be Anthropophagus. And I'm not saying that I don't like this film. I mean, it's clearly on this list, so I enjoy the film just fine. The thing that I think a lot of people forget about this film is how boring it is. It's really a slow film, and that's saying something for Joe D'Amato. I mean, most of his films are really, really slow and take a while to get going, and in my opinion only have a handful of redeemable scenes. Other than the creature, George Eastman, pulling out the unborn baby from the lady's womb and eating it, and, you know, eating his own guts. There's not a lot going on in this movie. It really kind of comes off as, like, somebody's travel footage to Greece. It's, you know, it's got a few scenes that end up being sort of, like, genius, like a work of art, and that's why it makes my list, but as an overall film, it's pretty boring, and if you disagree with me, just do me a favor and go back and watch it. It's a really slow burner film. But yeah, like I said before, the magnificent gore and some of those really intense makeup effects and kill scenes are enough to carry it into a top 5 for me, but can't get any closer than number 4. Alright, and at number 3 is Crawlers. Now, I know that this is like an absolutely atrocious film, but I'm someone who really likes a bad movie the same way that they like a good movie, you know what I mean? Movies like Troll 2 and stuff like that, I actually really enjoy watching bad movies. And I don't really use it as a knock against a director. I mean, if you can make an entertaining movie, whether it's, art with a capital A, or if it's, some low-budget trash like Troll 2 or Crawlers, like I said, as long as you can make an interesting film, I'll give it to you. And this movie is just a laugh riot the entire time. I think it was made right after Claudio Fragasso made Troll 2, which Joe D'Amato produced, and I'm not 100%, but I'm fairly sure that Crawlers was shot in Utah as well, under the same circumstances. All Italian crew and, small town English actors. And it just mixes for a hilarious recipe. Some of the effects are really well done. So it just, it just kind of ends up all around being an extremely fun movie. There's like this one character who's the police officer who is obviously dubbed. Like, I mean, I'm guessing that the Italian filmmakers or Italian editor, like, even when they got the footage back, they're like, this guy is terrible. We have to dub all of his stuff. It's hilarious. Just like Troll 2, the script is just really wonky, and, obviously Italian phrases and things don't translate very well, and it's really just like a really like oddly sexist film, and you can like see it in the English actors' faces that, you know, they know what they're saying is absolute garbage and gibberish at times. So do yourself a favor and check out Crawlers. I don't know if it's on DVD. I only have it on VHS. If you're really nice, maybe I'll make you a bootleg DVD rip and send it through the mail. Maybe that'll have to be one of my prizes sometime soon. Okay, number 2 is Absurd. And yes, I really do believe that Absurd is a better film than Anthropophagus. All around, I think it's a much faster paced film. It's probably Joe D'Amato's like quickest film. I mean, it gets right off to the races and never lets up. It's sometimes billed as Anthropophagus 2, and if you're a Wizard big box collector, you probably know it as Monster Hunter, which is an awful title. Super cool cover, but awful title and really misleading artwork. This one's just really fun, sort of like Crawlers. It stars George Eastman again, which is where I think some people think it's a sequel to Anthropophagus, but it's not. And like, it's basically him just like, he's running from this guy in the beginning of the movie, and he ends up like getting impaled, and his like guts are hanging out, and he ends up in the hospital, and they give him like a 0% chance of survival, and then suddenly he starts regenerating and is like a superhuman or something, and he just goes on a killing spree, and he starts terrorizing these like little teenage kids. And that's like the whole movie. There's no real story going on here. It's just an excuse for some really, really cool gore effects, some really cool kills. And I'm wondering if maybe that's how this whole movie came together. Because it definitely feels like just a series of like gory vignettes that kind of like just end. It's definitely got a quality to it that seems like it's almost ripping off like Halloween or something, you know, with like the babysitter and, you know, the sick girl who like can't get up out of bed, and the whole, oh, it's the boogeyman. So there's a couple of things going on here. It's not gold by any means, but it's a super entertaining film. So that's why Absurd makes my number 2 spot. Okay, and taking the number 1 spot is pretty obvious, right? No, it isn't. For me, it's Blademaster, or, as I'm sure most of you guys probably know it as, The Cave Dwellers.
Cave Dwellers, wasn't he in...
Cave Dwellers. Oh, it's the name of the...
Yeah, the movie with Miles O'Keefe. The movie that spawned one of the greatest Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes ever.
Oh, come on.
What the...
Okay, so he kills a deer, he tans the hides, he stretches the skins, he makes an anodized aluminum frame, he learns how to extrude and weld all in about 5 minutes, huh?
And I know that some of you guys think that that's like me making a joke or delivering sort of a backhanded compliment, but no, I'm being genuine. I have seen Cave Dwellers or The Blademaster more times than I've seen any other Joe D'Amato film put together. And even though I've seen it on Mystery Science Theater 3000, I don't think that discredits it. I mean, I love that movie. I mean, me and my friend Josh, we would reference this film all the time. You know, scenes like, no! 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 Or, I'm huge!
I'm huge!
You know, we are always quoting that episode. You know, it's the movie that introduced Miles O'Keefe to the world. It is a Conan the Barbarian ripoff, if you've never seen it. Maybe Willow. I'm not exactly sure what he was going for with this movie. There's like samurai in it and giant snake monsters. It's just an absolutely absurd movie that's just a completely thrilling, entertaining ride. And if you haven't seen the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, definitely check it out. I know that some of you guys are probably bummed that Beyond Darkness didn't make this list. It's not that I don't like that movie. I mean, if I did top 7, it would have most definitely made my top 7 Joe D'Amato films. I don't know what it is about that movie. Maybe I didn't see it at a young enough age, you know, for it to, you know, leave an impression on me. You know, sometimes I I choose a lot of films for nostalgic reasons. But, you know, there's just something about the Blademaster that is just absolutely, you just gotta watch the movie. That is 7th Street Productions' top 5 favorite Joe D'Amato films. I know that this one is, this video here is pretty niche, and it's definitely not going to gain me any new subscribers. But, you know, if there's a video that you guys would like to see, I would love to do them. So, you know, leave a comment below letting me know, you know, what movie you'd like me to review, or maybe what type of top 5 countdown you'd like to see me do. You know, they say that generosity leads to a happier and healthier life. So you should do me a favor and subscribe to this channel and share this video with all of your friends. Until next time, guys.
I won't let you touch him. He's our son.